Now that you've selected your audience, your problem, and your artifact, one of the most important steps before actually drafting your letter is to select sources. So on your Google Doc for your pre-writing, you'll see a bunch of directions. Now these directions may feel overwhelming, but I'm going to walk you through my process. So right now you're watching the Edpuzzle video. Awesome, that's done. You should first start by reviewing my example. I'm going to walk you through my example today and my process, so hopefully you can then use that when you're selecting your sources. So we read many articles in this unit, and you've already collected evidence on these articles. So some ideas to get you started. The first thing I would do is review my gender and stereotypes Google spreadsheet. So I'm going to go there now, and I actually borrowed this from a student. So I know that I'm writing about gender stereotypes and body image. So I'm thinking some articles that may be useful for me are the Barbie article and the Culture of Thin Bites Fiji. I know that these two articles apply because they talk about body image in particular. I also know that I won't be including articles like dealing with media violence or violent songs lyrics may lead to violent behavior because they have nothing to do with body image. So if this was my Google spreadsheet, I would definitely use these two, and that would be a great starting place. I also know, though, that I need a third source, and we only have two sources on this topic. So I'm going to go back to the pre-writing. I'm going to go back to my pre-writing sheet and complete the second step. So I would first start by entering in those two readings, the Culture of Thin Bites Fiji and Barbie, and then I would go through the source list that I compiled, Miss Green compiled. So this source list is really useful to you. It's organized by problem. I'm doing body image, so I can stay up here at the top. But say you're doing men and violence, you would scroll down a little bit. Bullying and hate crimes is even further down. And finally, inequality between men and women in the workplace and school. So on this list, there is a combination of articles that we've read as a class and new articles. So I would probably spend maybe 20 or so minutes going through all of these and checking out which ones are interesting to me. By the way, if you're doing body image, definitely check out misrepresentation. I already did this, so I know that I'm going to use this second source right here. So this, I click the link, it brings me to this page. And I know that I'm going to use these statistics because I already did this. I spent a long time doing this. So I will show you now my final project source list. So here's my example, and you have the link to this on your page. I first entered the Culture of Thin Bites Fiji. I went back to the article and got the author, the publisher, and the date. The publisher is like who published the article, maybe the New York Times or the Huffington Post. Sometimes you're going to have trouble finding the author, publisher, date. I'm happy to help you. Just raise your hand. This is probably the most important column, the rationale column. You really have to justify why this source is relevant. I imagine some people might be tempted to choose sources that aren't really useful because we're still building those skills. But if you can explain to me why this source is relevant, that's so important. So go ahead and read through my selecting sources for why I chose the Culture of Thin Bites Fiji. Once you're done, you can answer the questions on the right-hand side. I also explained why I chose the scary reality of a real-life Barbie doll and the issues that I just showed you from the NYC Girls Project. So now that you've reviewed my sources and you've learned a little bit about the process, I would like you to go back to your selecting sources page. If none of the sources I've compiled work for you, you can then research statistics and facts that may be useful to you. If you need help coming up with search terms, I'd be happy to help you. Make sure this is filled out by the time you walk into class on Friday.